Today on the channel, I'm going to talk to Eddie Ojeda about the 40th anniversary of Stay Hungry.
40th?
4-0. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk to Eddie Ojeda. It's the 40th anniversary of Stay Hungry, the multi-platinum selling Twisted Sister album.
Yeah, multi-platinum.
What, like 20 million, right? Isn't that
around there, yeah.
Do you actually count those yourself? The band assigned you with, you've got a bean counter at your place, right? Do you, every time one sells, do you get like a notification?
Sure.
Who keeps track of that number to know that?
My phone goes off. It goes off.
All right.
I get a beep.
It's like, you got 7 cents. Boom, 7 cents. 7 cents. Right?
Adds up.
Divide by 5, right?
Times 20 million.
Awesome. Well, first of all, Eddie's been on the channel before. Eddie's a good buddy of mine. And I'd say about a year and a half ago, we did an interview. And finally got Eddie here back at the place. And thought we'd celebrate the 40th anniversary of Stay Hungry and talk about the album a little bit, track by track, and I'd pick your brain a little bit about some of the lead up to Stay Hungry. Yeah. You don't know any of these questions I'm going to ask. Okay. And I probably don't even know some of them myself. I got to go over my notes. Yeah. So if I throw you a curveball, it's okay, but we'll see what happens.
Can you read your own handwriting?
It's shorthand. First of all, on the back of this album, you know, we've got you guys sitting here at a table, and now I apologize. This isn't the 40th anniversary. You guys released an actual, like a new version of this, right? That's got the.
I think so.
Yeah, I think. But this is the OG original Gangster,
OG.
autographed
Right.
by you.
That's me.
Copyright. But I remember once you were telling me on this photo on the back.
They were mad about my shoes.
They were mad about your shoes. What's the deal about that?
Well, it wasn't they. It was Jason Flom was mad about. He just went off like, "What's with those shoes?" I said, "I didn't know they were going to put the shoes." First of all,
who's Jason? Who's Jason?
He was like one of the top A&R guys at. They was also involved in getting us signed. We got signed in England by Phil Carson, but you know he really tried to get us signed in America first, Jason Flom, and he went on to. Signed a lot of big bands. I forgot the name of the record company, but anyway, he's had a very successful career. And
he was mad about your shoes.
Yeah, he said, "Why did you wear those shoes?" And I said, first of all, you know, we weren't wearing like platform shoes for these photos. These were like hang out in the street photos. And I think
those are some nice shoes.
AJ
though.
had sneakers. Yeah, they were like blue kind of. They were like hangout, you know, sneakerish kind of dressy sneaker shoes kind of look.
But he thought your shoes should have been a little more rock and
roll.
roll.
Just, you know, those like walking around, you know, when you're walking around Manhattan, you have to have comfortable shoes. You can't walk around with platform boots.
Right.
Especially, that's for stage. You wear different boots, but
didn't quite fit the album picture, right?
Well, this was a hangout, you know, in street clothes picture. It wasn't a makeup picture, you know.
Anyways, by the way, I just noticed our arms are on the table, so let's keep our arms off the table. It's moving the camera, right? Sorry, everybody.
Oh, is it moving the camera?
Yeah, this is a professional interview here. So he was mad about the shoes that you wore because he didn't think it fit the picture.
Yeah,
but they made you know, every time
they're even not noticeable. I don't know what's the big deal.
Now that I look at the picture now, and I think your shoes look good, man.
You know what? Now they look good.
Yeah, it looks good.
It's been so, now they're back in style, I guess. I don't know what it is. Is it something like, I mean, AJ's wearing sneakers. Was that okay?
His sneakers look worn out, man.
Yeah, those look like his dog peed on them a few times. And there's a rat over here. You know.
Where was this picture taken? Was this like in a studio?
It was a studio.
His studio, obviously.
Mark White's studio.
Yeah.
They built the whole thing. It was pretty cool.
Was this a real bone?
It was a real bone, yeah.
Did he actually take a bite out of the real bone?
He might have.
Right. That's cool. All right.
But it was a real bone. Yeah, that was for real. It smelled too. It was pretty stinky. Yeah, he built like a whole set for this, you know. And the reason that we didn't all end up on this in the front was because Mark and AJ kept goofing around during the band photos. You know, we're all like trying to be like cool, serious, and they're like making faces and doing stuff. You know, like so. D ended up being the only person on the front.
Well, you know, that's an iconic album cover.
Yeah,
so
it is.
I mean,
it kind of worked.
Was this supposed to be the album cover, something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
But because they
was something with our stage outfits, you know, with the war paint. You know, I call it war paint because it wasn't really glam. It started glammy, but it quickly turned into war paint.
Maybe they just didn't want the shoes on the album cover.
I mean, there's a milk crate. I'm sitting on a milk crate, for Christ's sakes.
How old were you guys in this picture, if you don't mind me asking?
20s.
20s? Yeah.
20s.
Now, I've told you this before, and I've mentioned this on my channel, but I went and saw this tour. And I'm from upstate New York, and I went and saw this concert in Binghamton, New York, and you guys filmed the video for the price there. And I had just got a guitar for Christmas.
Right.
It was a Hondo Les Paul. It sucked. But this concert, and I'm not kidding, this concert just made me decide I wanted to play music.
Yeah.
Right. You are the reason why I mean, I loved Van Halen, and I loved Def Leppard, Pyromania, and I loved the Scorpions, Love at First Sting.
Right.
Those three albums, you know, 84, Love at First Sting, and Pyromania were
it was
like
a great time for
they were on repeat.
The guitar stuff.
But I was a fan. I was a fan of music. But there's a time in your life when you become I want to be a musician, not a fan.
Right.
And it's because of you, honestly, and Twisted Sister and Dee's presence at Binghamton after that concert. And you guys were so good. I mean, I've seen the documentary before on Netflix, and you know, that's the only time I've seen you guys play live, unfortunately. But
and got inspired. Yeah.
Right. But it changed my life forever. Yeah. And you guys obviously were a seasoned, rehearsed. You guys were so on fire.
We were playing a lot, so we were tight.
Right, it was unbelievable, and even though it was being my first show, it was very impressionable. But I saw hundreds of shows years after that, and there are some that I remember to this day that blow me away. Right, but to this day, probably top 3 concerts ever, and I've seen a ton of shows. It was impactful. You guys were awesome, and the fact that you filmed that Price video that night was really it was interesting, you know. So wait, before, when you guys were leading up to Stay Hungry, you know, we don't have to. We're going to talk about this album in detail as much as possible. But how many years were you guys pounding the streets, playing shows before Stay Hungry came out? Would you say?
Probably 8 years, I would think.
8 years,
something like that. I mean, we got lucky because even though we were, you know, playing all these bars, we were playing all the big bars. They were like big. It was a big thing. They had a lot of these clubs could hold 2,000-3,000 people. You know, some of these big clubs in Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut. So in the whole tri-state area, you know, we were one of the top bands.
Yeah,
us and Rat Race Choir and Zebra and Good Rats at the time. You know, we could play on any night of the week and get 2,000 people in the club.
How many shows a week were you playing, would you say, on average?
Like 4 or 5 nights a week.
4 to 5 nights a week, and none of you guys had jobs. This was your job.
That was important too because that was our job.
Yeah,
we didn't have to get day jobs.
Right.
And I always felt if you're going to want to make it in the music, you have to be living off your music. And all that playing really makes you a lot better too. Like you're playing every night in front of thousands of people. You know, I mean, we built it up. It didn't automatically turn into that. You know, when we first started, it was just our girlfriends. You know, in the crowd.
Were you guys living together in like an apartment, or did you guys all have different places? Or
we all had our different. Well, we tried living together for 1 year, and that didn't work. We rented a house in Massapequa.
This is what the dinner table looked like when you
Long
guys
Island.
were.
It probably did, yeah. I mean, there's people writing their names on the food, like that kind of stuff.
Right, don't touch my chicken sandwich,
yeah,
right?
Here's my popcorn, and especially like a bag of potato chips. There was one bag of potato chips with D's name on it that was for 2 months. Nobody, and like finally somebody said, I'm opening this pack of potato chips. So it got silly. Anyway.
And did it cause problems? Because 2 months later, someone opened them.
I think he got mad about the potato chips. Yeah,
So you guys had your own places, and
it didn't work out.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a nice house, and it was kind of fun, but it did not work out for us. So,
did you guys own like a van with a trailer that you would bring equipment? Would you guys load in the same time, or did you all meet each other at the gigs?
Yeah, we all drove in separate cars.
Did you put like your stack in the back of a car?
No, we had a crew.
Okay.
We had a band. We had a truck.
All right, so you guys had built it up to enough where you guys.
We built it up. We had a small truck at first, and then we kept building it up. But that was, the road crew would, we had 2 guys. Eventually, we had 4 or 5 guys. As things built up, so did the stage. We had 1 half-stack Marshall, then it turned into 2 Marshalls. Then it turned into 3 Marshalls. 3 full stacks.
Did you play all your stacks, or were they for show?
Just the bottoms.
Just the bottoms?
Yeah, the 2 bottoms.
Right.
I never used the tops.
Did you run 2 amps at once, or were you always just one head?
I think I was running 2 amps at one time.
Plexis or JCM 800s, or what were you?
In the beginning,
playing?
it was the 50 watts. We were starting. We for some reason we started using the 50 watt Marshalls.
Like the MK2s.
I forgot the number on them.
Yeah.
But they were like a small version of it. And
the 4 input.
4 input, yeah.
Yeah. Would you jack it and then were you running drive pedals in front of that?
Yeah,
stuff?
I used to use pedals for that.
What kind of pedal would you like?
It's like most of the Boss stuff, MXR.
Yeah.
MXR and Boss, like an equalizer, and a lot of the Boss pedals.
Did you experiment a lot with pedals, or did you find your sound and stick with it pretty much?
Yeah, I pretty much found my sound. I kept it pretty simple.
Yeah.
Like a flange, delay, equalizer, and the distortion. 1 or 2 distortion different.
Now those amps didn't break up very much, so you had to drive them and then run your delays after the pedals because there's no loops on them, right?
The good thing about the 50 watt heads is that you could crank them on 10.
Yeah.
And they were loud enough, for clubs.
Right.
They were really loud. But as soon as we got signed and started playing Coliseums, opening from Iron Maiden and bands like that, we had to go straight to 100 watts because the 50 watt amp sounded like a transistor 8. It just did not work.
Yeah, you needed the meat.
Yeah, so we had to have the 100 watt Marshall.
Did you EQ anything? Did you have an equalizer pedal, or you just use straight up like
I used
the amp?
I used
EQ?
to kind of run things pretty flat, on as far as because a lot of the Marshall amps, the knobs didn't do much. If you remember.
Yeah.
Except like the bass. So a lot of times you try to turn everything up to the corner.
I found that with Marshalls, the Ace Frehley rule is just turn everything on 10.
Basically, yeah.
Especially the mid-range. Marshalls have that bump in the mid that really fit well in a mix. Sometimes they don't sound great like by themselves.
Right.
But when you're playing with the bass and the drum, they just find
They cut.
They cut right through, yeah. It sounds killer.
And I think I remember cutting back on the treble a bit, but I remember running the bass, and most of the time the volume was all the way on 10.
Yeah.
For the 50 watts. And
your amp volume, you had the A and the B, so you could balance the treble in the mid, in the high end, the low end, and the treble, right?
Right.
So you were a little heavier on the low end, so
more on the low end. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to cut back on the treble.
Right.
And then I had an MXR, one of those 10-band equalizers.
Yeah.
And I used to kind of run that in like a V shape to kind of boost the mid range.
For solos or just for everything?
Just for everything.
Yeah. What'd you do for your leads? Did you have a boost pedal?
I had a distortion pedal. Like I had 2 pedals, and I had one for more like straight ahead rhythm, like chunky rhythm, and then I had one for a little boosted for the solos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough because those amps really, when you put a boost in front of them, all they do is kind of overdrive a little bit more. So I've always found you got to save a little bit of volume in your guitar in the tank a little bit. So you
Yeah, I used to just leave the volume all the way up.
Yeah, old school, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was times, because sometimes you just cut back on the volume,
Yeah.
and it cleans up pretty nice.
Yeah.
So
That's what I like to do. I think that's the best.
when we did little quiet bits,
Right.
we would just cut back on the volume and leave the pedals up,
Right.
up, or just turn off the boost pedal, the lead pedal.
It leaves the warmth of the amp. If you go clean on the amp and
Yeah.
dirty, it just the headroom of the amp doesn't go away when you roll back. You can
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
When
it's
did you switch over to Charvel guitars? Like what?
pretty well? First, I remember using Ibanez and Gibsons.
Were you using a Destroyer or one
I had
of
the
the Les Paul
Destroyer.
copies or something?
No, I had Les Paul copies. I was using Ibanez's for a while.
Yeah.
Because I was, I had a Strat, but I wanted something Les Paul-y, but I didn't care for the way the heel on the Les Paul.
Uh-huh.
So Ibanez made these Les Pauls at the time that sounded really good. They were
Right.
cheap. And I had the Destroyer that I wish I never would have sold or changed, refinished.
Yeah.
Because now those Carina, they were great guitars, man. I really liked it. They
Van
sounded
Halen
great.
won all the stuff without whammy bars. Destroyer. Eddie played Destroyers. I'm
Was it
sure
not-
you're aware of
was it
that.
an Ibanez or was it?
Yeah. All the non whammy bar stuff on the first couple of Van Halen
Yeah,
records.
the-
This is Destroyer.
Those early.
And he
Ibanez,
ruined it and cut the shark
I think it was
thing
like
out of it.
$150 for the guitar.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a really nice guitar. It played really well. I mean, I got a lot of use out of it.
Yeah.
And like I said, I wish I never sold it. But it's one of those things, you keep looking for something else. Like, even though something's working, you always trying to find something else.
Charvel came around like early 80s, right? 82, 80?
Yeah,
is that
early
right?
80s, around the 80s. First, I was BC Rich came in. Like Aerosmith was using the BC Rich
Right.
big time, so that really. And I had a blue BC Rich Mockingbird, and Jay I think bought the Seagull, which was more like a Les Paul. The other one was almost like an SG type of guitar, the Mockingbird,
Right.
with the horn,
Right.
the long horn. Or the
Yeah, I
short
had a
horn.
Mockingbird.
And I loved that guitar. It was 24 frets.
Had Super DiMarzio's in
It
it.
had the
Had a
Marzios.
preamp in it. It was
I
really
had the preamp, all that
through
stuff.
body
And
neck.
it's another thing that I would use, the preamp sometimes.
Yeah. The
for a
boost.
solo, but just a little, not all the way up. 'Cause
Right.
That's the problem. Sometimes too much gain is not good either. Cause then
Yeah, it
just
was over the
sounds-
top, man.
It sounds too saturated. But
Did your Charvels have Floyd Roses on them initially, or
not the first one. When they started making those, it was one sheet. In fact, I remember when I ordered mine, the first catalog, it wasn't even a catalog. It was like a sheet like this with a photo, of the guitars, and my bullseye was in that photo. I still have that somewhere. That was their first really imprint thing. And they started, I saw some of these guitars. Hey, this company's making these custom guitars, and they were like $500 to get, $400 or $500.
Yeah.
So I ordered, I said I want something with pink and black circles, because at the time we were using the Sound City cabs,
Right.
and it went with the logo. I wanted something to go with our logo that was kind of bullseye-ish.
Did you start using that on Stay Hungry, or was that Under the Blade as well?
I used it early, before Stay Hungry.
Did Dee design this because of the Bullseye guitar, this pink and black?
No.
Did it have anything to do with that?
No.
Because I always noticed that your color coordination, and
Everybody-
JJ always had the yellow and black.
Yeah, I was
thing.
red and black. AJ was blue and black, and Mark was green and black. And everybody was happy with the colors that
Okay.
His wife, girlfriend at the time, was making our outfits. She went to FIT.
Whose girlfriend was doing it?
Suzette. Dee's wife.
Dee's wife. Not his current wife. Was making the outfits for you guys.
Yeah.
That's cool.
She was in college,
Who did your all's makeup?
We kind of did our own thing with it.
Right.
You know?
Who did you model yourself after? I mean, I know in this era of rock and roll, it was the thing. It wasn't really glam. It was kind of glam. It was kind of New York Dolls. It wasn't Kiss. It wasn't Alice Cooper.
I think it was Bowie's influence.
Bowie?
That whole Bowie thing.
Yeah.
Ziggy and Stardust. And so that, it was kind of that kind of. It started a little glammy, but then it turned into more of a war paint thing.
Was that
Which
Dee's idea to do the war paint type stuff, or it just sort of evolved?
It just evolved because, I mean, there's nothing glammy about that makeup. You know what I mean?
No, not at all.
It's kind of hideous if you think about it.
Yeah, you guys were the ugliest women on the planet.
Right. So, we weren't a glam band.
No, and your music wasn't glam,
No.
which I wanted to talk about. Like, I know we're going to talk about guitars and tone and the album tracks, but Dee didn't really write lyrics about sex and drugs,
No.
and he wrote more.
About life.
He wrote about life,
Yeah.
right. So, did you before we delve into this track by track stuff? Did you use the same gear in the studio for this record that you were using on the road, or did the producer want you to use different gear?
Well, we used the gear that was in the studio, which was, Marshalls and Boogies.
Okay. But they had their preference of stuff, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, we basically brought whatever effects that we liked, or for Stay Hungry, we had.
Were the drums AJ's?
No, I think there were the drums. There were studio drums.
Because I gotta tell you, man, the drums sound
Great
on this album. I mean, the tones, all the tones on this record, from the vocals to the guitars, everything. But the drums on this record are so good.
Yeah.
Something about the attack.
Well, AJ was a great drummer.
Right.
I mean, he was an incredible guy. Like his memory was he used to track the songs with nobody else playing, by himself.
To a click?
To a click.
Mm-hmm. He just knew them well enough where he would just listen to them in his
knew
mind.
Without anybody, sometimes, I think there was a few times I played scratch guitar along with him.
Wow.
But he didn't need it.
So you would come in and the tracks were
I think there was
done?
one time that I broke a string and they just said, I don't need it, it's okay.
Wow.
And we kept going. Like, he knew where everything was. I thought it was incredible for him to track, the chorus, get heavy on the solo part, all the little influences that you play during a song. It was incredible to watch him do it, and he was like exact. I mean,
well, that not only shows you how much of a professional he was and a true musician, but you guys were that well rehearsed and knew your material. You knew your stuff so well.
Yeah.
That's kind of a lost art form in music nowadays.
That's what's so good about playing a lot.
It's true.
It's like what it does for your chops.
I think a lot of people on my channel, they ask questions about how do I become a better player, and what's your advice? And there's all kinds of advice you give somebody, but when you start playing live, that's when you really develop your sound,
right?
And your ability to interact and change to problems.
Also, when you do it constantly, it's really good for your ability.
Yeah,
the way you can play.
It's like going to war.
It's like second nature. Yeah, I thought about that. Yeah.
I've never been to war, but I guess it's a battle out there.
It was the kind of thing about that kind of feeling when you go on stage with
right. And that's how you grow as a band. It's how you develop your sound, your image, and exactly, almost magical when you play with a drummer long enough. For a singer, you can watch them and you look for cues.
Yeah.
If they don't do something, you're like, you didn't do that thing, and they're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
You usually walk to the left.
It just comes in like natural.
You just get used to certain things.
Yeah, but it was something to watch AJ, and he was never wrong. I forgot we used to call him. It was something out of the Matrix that we, the person that could tell things were happening. I forgot the orifice. No, not orifice. the Oracle.
The Oracle. The orifice.
Would have been
That's like the adult movie of the Matrix.
That's the porn version. The Orifice.
Now, I told you earlier there may be stuff we have to cut out. Now we may have to.
Oracle. Yeah.
Screw it. I'm going to leave the orifice in. Are you ready to talk about Stay Hungry, the album? All right, I was listening. I've listened to this album probably 1,500 times in my entire life, but I listened to it again today just to refresh myself. So the first track is "Stay Hungry," which is the title track. And while this song was never a hit, I always felt like, you guys started your
Send a
shows with
message,
this.
yeah.
This is how you guys started your tour.
We were hungry.
Right, and it was a message, and when I was 15, I'm like, it's okay. Get me to We're Not Gonna Take It. But the more I listened to it, it was a banger, and this song just you guys are ready to fight when this song comes on.
It's a kick-ass song. It's a boom bat I just take sorry off.
Yeah, one thing that I really dug about your playing, and I still do on this album, is you do these whammy bar things in this song where you hit a note and it'll feed back, and you always do this wow wow wow. You part of your style. I don't know if you know this or not.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do. Is you'll play whammy bar dips on beat.
Yeah,
You'll hold
right.
a chord and
Right.
Where did that come from? Like why do you do that?
I've always been very rhythmic. Even though I'm a guitar player, I can play like congas or bongos really well.
Yeah.
I'm very good at keeping time. So that was another thing. I could play to a click track and rock out,
Yeah.
And some people I work with say, how could you play like that to a click track? Because sometimes I had to be the first one, especially when I did solo stuff. I had to be the first one on the recording because that's how I taught people the songs, that were going to play on it. So a lot of drummers would tell me, Joe Franco, who I worked with on my solo stuff, he told me, how could you, you're really playing. Like, how do you do that to a click? I'm shocked. I was like, because he said, it was really easy for him to play because I was on it. But I've always had good timing.
Well, I find that
blessing.
interesting though, and it's prevalent in this song is when you do the wah 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 wah, this whammy bar thing, and then the guitar solo in this, and
I like percussion. I like even sometimes I'm joking around with my hands. I guess it's being Latin too. It's just kind of in your blood, that listening to, especially as a kid, my parents playing Latin music with all the drums and stuff, kind of affects.
Now, in the guitar solo on this song, there's a call and response. And that's throughout kind of a theme through a lot of these songs in this album where it goes, you do this diddle 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 and then another diddle 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 diddle.
JJ did that one.
So,
played the solo
did he
on
play
that.
the whole solo on Stay Hungry, or was that you?
No, he just played the solo on that.
So, Stay Hungry was...
He did the little water diddle thing, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you didn't play any of the leads on Stay Hungry.
Well, I did the... We.
You did that stuff. Okay, but the guitar solo is him.
In the rhythm, there's a boom, 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 then there's a harmonic. That's
Right.
That's all the rhythm tracks, yeah.
Okay. That's cool. I didn't know who
That's
did
why I
it.
used the whammy bar on that song. Doom, doom, doom,
So did JJ do the call and the responses on the solo?
I think he did. Yeah, he did the. I used to boom, doom, doom, doom. I used to just play straight ahead rhythm. The solo he played was just very short, just beetle, 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 beetle.
Right. Okay.
Pretty simple solo.
Well, see, the thing is, it didn't sound like you when I listened to it, but I thought, but that's why we're doing this, because I didn't know if that was you and him playing that together. Now, did you guys break that up live, or did he do it all
He just
live?
said it was so short.
Okay.
There was no reason to break it up.
Well, I can tell there's a punch in there. Like, I can tell that he probably was trying to get it just right.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's sections where he's ending one phrase and starting another. It doesn't sound bad, but...
It might have been.
All right, so next track, We're Not Gonna Take It, the big one. This is the big, one of the big ones anyway.
Yeah.
Now, We're Not Gonna Take It, the solo on this song, some people love it. Some people have complained about it. Like, they say, it's just the melody.
So easy. My mother could play it. Yeah.
But solos, in my mind, have to be memorable. And your thought process going into the guitar solo to repeat the melody, was it because... What was the thought process?
First of all, because...
This solo is you, right?
Yeah. Especially with the whammy and the harmony.
You did the harmony also?
Yeah, I did all the harmony
Okay.
parts. Originally, it was supposed to come off like a Queen thing. Like, how Brian May plays these real simple licks.
Right.
But when he does the three-part harmony to it, it comes alive.
Right.
Because if it was too busy, it wouldn't work with the harmonies. So I was trying to get like a Brian May thing in there.
Oh, okay.
That's why I kept it so simple. And plus, it was a single, so they said you can't have a long solo. Live, we used to do a long version of it, and then I used to play a whole solo.
Like something different than that?
Well, I did I did that, but in the middle of that, I did a whole
That's neat.
solo thing.
See, I can't even in my mind think of like what you would possibly even play over this song besides what you did. But I got to check that out. I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah, and sometimes it's been a problem because if I've come up to play with some people, and they only know the single version, and then I'll go into the solo and they get all messed up because I said, "Did you go over the live?" I sent them a copy of a live version.
Yeah.
And they said, "Yeah, sure, I did." And so whenever I do that with a band or somebody else, I gotta play the simple version. So, and once again, like I said, you can hear the harmonies in there, but they never mixed them loud enough. In fact, I remember being pissed off about it. Like, why? That was supposed to be like a Queen type of thing.
So you had to mix the harmonies louder and get it right.
They didn't. They only had the main one and the other two.
Yeah.
I did 3-part harmonies on it, and the other 2 harmonies they're audible, but they're not. The other one, the main one, stands out so much that you can't hear the harmonies. So that was the whole thing behind that solo.
I always hate it when I hate my mixes.
And keep it short. Well.
So you guys started playing this song, obviously. How long did you guys play this song before you cut the record, playing it live, before anybody had heard it? Was this song...
We played it live for quite a bit.
Did it have a really good response? Did you guys?
Oh, yeah.
Did you guys know this is our song? Did you know? Did you kind of have this feeling?
Well,
like,
we used playing clubs even before we got signed. It got to the point where we were doing 90% originals.
Right.
And everybody knew it. We did cover songs, but at one point we were barely playing cover songs.
But you knew this song by crowd response. You guys could feel this was like, this is...
Yeah, we always had great crowd response. Great crowd response, especially with,
Whose idea was this music video? This music video was right when MTV was becoming a thing. And, MTV, thankfully, MTV created a lot of iconic
Right, well, there was the whole video era.
Right.
And that video really just took off.
Yeah.
I mean, it was incredible.
Whose concept was the video? Do you know? Did you guys have a team that came up with?
We had a director, Marty Kalner, from. And he used to do a lot of comedy guys. I forgot who else. I think he did Chris Rock.
Mm-hmm.
He worked with a lot of those comedy bits where they do a film and they show it. And I think not Eddie Murphy, but he was a pretty well-known director in Hollywood, and he started doing that video. After we did that video, he got so many people, like every band in the world wanted him to do videos for him, with him. So he ended up doing Heart and so many people after that.
How long did this video take to shoot?
Fleetwood Mac, huh?
How long did it take to shoot this video?
It was over like a 4-day period.
Were you there on site mostly with the actors, or did you guys do a lot of separate cut scenes?
Well, the only problem with Hollywood or making films or videos is it's called hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
Because there was times that we were just waiting and waiting and waiting,
Yeah.
Keep redoing your hair, you fall asleep, waiting, and then there was times that they never even called us up to do anything. Because we ran out of time. It would be like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So.
I remember in Ace Frehley's book, he talks about Kiss Meets the Phantom, and there was one point where he just left, and they were like, "You got to stay." And he just got in his car and took off because he couldn't handle it. And it sounds like that's kind of how it was, in a way. I mean, that's hurry up and wait. Were you guys in Hollywood doing this? Was it filmed out west?
Los Angeles, yeah. That was all Los Angeles. And
was it in like a Hollywood, like a production studio, or was it a house? Or
usually a house. We're not going to take it. Was in a house and separate scenes and live places.
Yeah,
I forgot what clubs, but it was all over Los Angeles. But most of it was filmed in a house.
Yeah,
that's what people do. They rent out their homes to film guys.
Well, when you look back at classic '80s movies, like. Porky's, or some of these movies, Caddyshack and Vacation, and some of these really campy '80s movies. They're so cool. They're shot on film, and they have this warmth to them and this genuine. Even though they're kind of corny, you love it.
Yeah.
And this, and I mean that as a compliment. This video,
Yeah.
really, I think it holds up because
Mm-hmm.
and nowadays it's so nostalgic to look back at, even like Back to the Future and things like that. It fits.
Yeah, that was the era for.
It's
In
era.
fact, when we did that video, I didn't even have cable TV.
I didn't either.
So people would tell me, "Oh man, you're all over the TV." I'm like, I wish I could see it.
I didn't have cable, and after high school, I was in ninth grade. I would go home, and for 30 minutes, they would show music videos, and you might get 3 videos or 4 because of commercials, and they would show this, and I would wait. I'd rush home from school and watch
Right.
it, and it's.
It was one of the first videos made with a whole, story in the beginning. With a whole acted out story with Nita Meyer and Douglas C. They have to call him because we couldn't use the name Nita Meyer because of the movie Animal House. But he did a great job. Mark Metcalf, great actor. And can we take a water break?
Yeah, let's take a break.
Break.
All right, we're back from water break. All right, so we're wrapping up. We're not going to take it. So this song was, the first really big video for you guys. And I would say, even though you guys had definitely paid your dues, this really put you on the map. This was really broke you through to the other side.
Yep, big time.
All right, we're going to go into some album tracks.
Okay.
And so Burn in Hell. Burn in Hell it's pretty freaking scary, man. We were talking, this song used to terrify me when I would listen to it, but it's so dark. And
it's pretty heavy.
Yeah, to me, Twisted Sister, you guys, I think of it this way. Metal, in my opinion, from the late 80s, 79, 80, metal went through kind of this era, this period where it was like Maiden and Priest, and it kind of had this darker vibe to it, and then metal kind of got sweetened up a little bit and thinned out into your Def Leppard and your Poison and stuff. And you guys were kind of, I feel like with songs like this, you leaned more towards
like
heavier stuff, right?
More
And
like
Twisted
Priest or Maidenish.
Right, so you guys were never, would you say Priest and Maiden were influences or not really?
Oh yeah, big time.
Okay.
And especially the first time we played with Priest, they just had that sound, and their songs are just so powerful, So I definitely think that we copped that feel, and a bunch of songs like this,
Well, Dee wrote, we talked about this earlier, Dee wrote about life and cool topics. And this song, was, I don't know if he was lecturing in this song or if it was more interpersonal, like he was kind of talking to himself or what. I mean, did he ever really give you guys any kind of insight as far as I wrote the song about this, or was it all kind of just self-explanatory?
I think it was self-explanatory, yeah.
Yeah.
We kind of knew it. I guess we discussed some stuff about it.
The intro solo in this, was this you?
That's me, yeah.
In the main solo?
The theme solo. In the solo, we split it up.
Okay.
In the middle part, we go back and forth. But
there's some really cool like right. There's
that's like a prog riff,
Right. Right, and the way AJ played with you guys, I mean, when you came up with those types of parts, how do you come up with those parts together? Did you guys just say this would be cool if we did this, and you just sort of fell into it, or had you guys played so long together you could just kind of come up with these things quickly, or how did that organically take place?
That riff, I'm trying to remember who came up with that. Because a lot of times I came up with riffs and stuff that became part of the song.
Yeah.
I never got writing credit for it, but in fact, I saw an interview with George Harrison where he had the same problem. I mean, he's the Beatles, but he said, I used to come up with all these bits here and there, and I never got any credit for it. Songs that John or Paul wrote.
Right.
So it happens in bands, and I used to come up with quite a few things. Just because I heard it in my head, and it fit the song, and it was, we would use it. So that riff, I'm not exactly sure if Dee sang it to me or.
It's pretty it's pretty
'cause
complex stuff. I mean,
it's a real guitar player riff. It's not like a singer would go.
you know what kind of reminds me of is how when Alice Cooper did Billion Dollar Babies, and they had the two guitar players, and they came up with these parts that created a song within a song, and the two guitars would kind of weave their way through kind of rhythmic stuff, and you guys very often would change keys. Like it would go into a solo, and a lot of times AJ would break up the rhythm to make it cool, and you guys would modulate and come up with like a different, so that's what stood out to me about this song always, is I think Burn in Hell is musically...
Well, it's just like a two-part song. It's also, Captain Howdy, so... It's two songs in one. It's always been, and that theme solo in the beginning.
What a great intro! Yeah,
I like that. I like theme solos.
What's that sound effect in the beginning of this song where it goes? You do your solo, you do a lot of triplet stuff. The middlies. You do good at. Well, and then it goes, and it goes, and it goes. There's a sound that goes doom doom. There's like a little thing. Do you know what I'm talking about? It sounds like you hit your strings on the pickups, or I don't know what, or maybe it's drums. I don't know what it is, but do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
There's a sound effect. There's something.
I held that note.
Yeah, it's right before the song.
Then it would feed into like a high pitch. Yeah.
I'll have to play it for you in the car or something. There's a sound in there, like where the song drops out and there's silence, and then there's something that happens, and then it starts up. I always was curious about that.
Yeah, maybe you were smoking something.
No, it's there. I listened to it again. I always listened for it. If you've heard it, if you're watching this interview and you know what I'm talking about, let me know. All right, so the gritty amp tone. These amp tones, a lot of these songs, when you're playing just rhythms, the separation on the Marshall tones, it's.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. The separation that you get on these Marshall tones, you can hear such definition in the notes. You know what I'm talking about? It's like, was that your distortion pedal making that noise, or that tone? Was that like your?
I think it was just my rhythms, the way I played it.
The amps sound so good. I don't know any other metal or rock album that's got an amp tone like that's on.
Yeah.
It's on all the songs, but there's certain songs where it really stands out because there's just like the drums are grooving and you're hitting big power chords and you just hear this spread of this Marshall. That's just mid-range and just it's perfect, man. Production on this album is fantastic.
Yeah, Tom Werman produced it, and Tom Workman, the engineer, was also like a guy who used to come up with great ideas. He was very talented.
Yeah,
he wasn't just an engineer.
Yeah,
I mean, he made a producer's life very easy, and he always had pedals too. He always,
So he'd give you, hey, try this, try that.
Yeah, give me this and set me up, and then go for it. That's.
Yeah,
like I Wanna Rock was that kind of solo. Like the first time I did, I was just going through it. Like
we're getting there.
The first
we're getting there.
Yeah, the first. Yeah.
We're getting there. Hang on to it. We're gonna talk about the Crybaby, right?
Okay.
Yeah, hang on. We're getting there, man. I don't want to steal your thunder, but we're getting there. All right, let's talk about this. Is Horror-teria.
Horror-teria.
What is Horror-teria?
It's those two songs.
Right. What is Horror-teria? Was that Dee's concept? I mean, what is?
I don't know who came
what's the
up
deal
with the word
that?
Horror-teria.
Were you guys channeling Alice Cooper or Ozzy?
Well, he was a big Alice fan, and also he's a big horror movie guy. D. So I don't know who came up with that fruit fly. So, anyway, I don't know where he's drinking my water.
Yeah, we've got a fruit fly flying around here. I had some bananas out, and we're getting pestered by this.
Yeah, it's making me bananas.
So D was a horror fan,
right?
And
especially when he looked in the mirror.
Right.
Just
He didn't he
kidding.
have like sharp teeth at some point? Didn't he like cut
He
off
actually did that. Yeah.
for a while?
He made fangs
He
that he regretted.
Could he bite himself?
Well, no, I don't know what he wasn't even on drugs, like,
Right.
but I don't know what made him say, do that to his teeth. I mean, I think after like 6 months, he had to put veneers or something on.
Maybe
them.
that's what Horror-teria is.
Yeah,
I mean,
his teeth.
so Horror-teria is just something he came up with because he's a horror aficionado. Yeah. All right, and
It might have been, Tom Werman's idea or something.
Okay.
So I'm not sure where that came from.
Now this is split into two sections, A and B. A is Captain Howdy, and B is Street Justice. So
Right.
Captain
So
Howdy.
there's supposed to be 3 songs.
Now I could be wrong. Well, Burnin' Hell started it, but
Right.
technically on the album listing, it says Horror-teria A-B, which I didn't remember. I got to admit, I didn't remember. I thought Burnin' Hell was part of Horror-teria, but I looked at it. I could swear I looked at it today. But anyway, point being is Captain Howdy is the next track.
It's pretty dark.
It seems like I remember. Wasn't Captain Howdy mentioned in Amityville Horror?
Yep.
Okay, so
That's where he
you
got
guys
that
are from Long Island in
Right.
New York. Were you guys was Amityville had just recently happened? So were you? Was it inspired? Were you kind of
it
thinking
was
about
a big
Amityville?
film at the time. It was like a very big film, The Exorcist. And
No, Amityville Horror.
Amityville Horror, though, yeah.
Well, Exorcist too.
But he say in Exorcist 2, I think that's where they used Captain Howdy.
It may be, but I remember.
No, that's
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
no, it was. I'm pretty sure it was Captain Howdy was a character in her dreams or something like that.
Okay. Is it supposed to be Satan?
Captain Howdy could be Satan,
It's just a dark entity.
could be Santa Claus. Santa Claus with teeth.
This song terrified me, man. I was like, because The Exorcist and Amityville Horror, those two movies, they dominated media in the if you're not from the 70s or 80s, if you're growing up in this era, those were really really trauma.
Yeah.
It's like Jaws. You watch Jaws and you can never swim in the ocean again. Like there was a lot of our childhood ruined because of these movies.
Yeah.
But this song is cool regarding the context of the song, the subject matter.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of your triplet feel, there's a triplet feel solo in this song. It modulates. Do you remember? This sound totally like you? This triplet.
On which part?
Captain Howdy. And it sounds like you're playing in the neck pickup. It has like this mellow tone in Captain Howdy. Now, I'm depending on editing and what copyrights. I might edit and put some of this stuff in this video, but so I don't know. Do you remember if you played the lead in Captain Howdy?
Yeah, I played the lead in that.
Oh, all right. So you said earlier that the producer was real good about bringing in different pedals and stuff.
Yeah, it was.
And
sometimes I use one of his pedals.
I noticed that the neck pickup, it might not have been a neck pickup, it might have been a bridge, but it had a barky kind of mid-range sound. And I noticed later on in the album, there was another song, Nature of the Beast.
Right.
It had the same solo sound. So I wonder if you guys would you go in and cut solos? Would you work on a song and then go to home and come back, or did you do all your solos over a couple days, or?
Yeah, I did the solos separately. The rhythm tracks, I played all the rhythm tracks on both sides if you have it in stereo.
So all the rhythm tracks on this album are you?
Yeah. I think JJ played on We're Not Gonna Take It. He did a rhythm track on that.
Okay.
The reason for that was, like I said, my timing, it was easy for me to do it.
Yeah.
Play straight through it one take.
But your solos, you would only do one in one day, or you would do a series?
It depends. Yeah, it depends what had to be done first.
How long did it take to cut this record?
I think it was 2 weeks in New York,
2 weeks.
and then another 3 to 4 weeks in
Yeah.
California.
Have you got any rough mixes or things that you've got?
I had probably on tape
Or
somewhere.
alternate versions of stuff?
Not alternate, but I had rehearsals. I have all that stuff on little cassettes that I used to.
Yeah.
Because you go to rehearsal, you
Right.
record it, and then practice at home or come up with a solo. But
it's a shame about today everything's
Digital.
immortalized, right? And like I've got like 8,000 pictures of my kids. I've got like 8 pictures of myself when I was a kid because it was film, right?
It was film,
right?
yeah.
And we didn't save stuff, and if you did, it's gone.
Those
It's
tapes are probably
destroyed.
not even good anymore because
Right.
they're so old. So yeah, it was.
You don't think about saving that stuff either in the moment.
No, you don't. But would have been a good thing to save some of those rehearsals. When we were learning the album. But
I wonder if the reels are still like locked up in A&M studios, or like if they're still around, or
they're around.
they must be because they remastered it for
Yeah.
the 40th, right? So they put them.
They were around.
They're somewhere.
I forgot where the last time we had them.
I gotta let my cat
Yeah,
outside.
they're in a safe place. Okay,
Take a
cat
break. All right, let's move on to part B of Horror-teria. Street Justice. Street Justice it's what a different type of song. I mean, we go from Captain Howdy, and this is what I envisioned. I'll tell you what I thought. I thought Captain Howdy was kind of like this guy that was a vigilante, and he could go dark side, he could go light, he could. He's living his life and he's being influenced by all these things around him. And then Street Justice, to me, the way it starts off with a crowd, there's crowd noise in the beginning, right? And it's just like an uprising. Like the guy, I feel like in my mind, the guy kind of redeems himself and fights for, Street Justice, we all know what Street Justice is. It's just, you're going to you're either going to get pounded, in the ground, or you gotta be the one.
It's vigilante.
Yeah. So, where'd that crowd noise come from? Was it like just the studio tape someone had like a crowd noise? Do you know?
From Sergeant Pepper's? No. There's a scene in Sergeant Pepper's when they come back, and a section where there's a crowd talking. I don't know if you.
Yeah.
You're talking about. I guess it just kept, because it was Street Justice, so there was a little crowd thing with people. It's kind of like a revolution.
But was that like roll like tape that they had of like
it
a
could
crowd?
have been just standard, crowd noise.
I know this is like a lame question, but this is stuff I've listened to for all my whole
It
life.
works because it's
it's
kind of like about Street Justice, so it's kind of like.
I get that, but I want to know how did you guys get a crowd noise?
Just before a riot starts, you hear all the rumbling of the people talking. So that's the effect of that.
It was probably stock audio in the studio. He's like,
Probably,
right, cool.
Unless they used Sergeant Pepper.
Now, Street Justice has got a really nasally lead part. It's and you do a lot of pull-offs. There's like, I've noticed that you tried to vary when you did your solos. They all have signature stuff. Like it really sounds like you took a lot of time to try to come up with so they didn't all sound the same. I've had that problem cutting records before where I'm like, gosh, that solo kind of sounds like the last solo, but
that can happen. Yeah.
Did you?
I purposely didn't want to fall into that kind of rut where every solo sounds the same. That happens with especially a lot of the speed players.
Did you have these solos worked out a lot of times before?
Oh yeah, I always wrote my solos at home and came up with them. So with Street Justice, there's this stuff at the end. I think I do all the solos now on that song, except for that one part in Burning Hell where we switch off. But
I love that rhythm in Street Justice. There's like dun, 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 dun. It's just
it's fast.
Yeah.
It's not easy to play, and I did it all down beats.
And that's not an easy part to do a solo over. So you're playing solos over some rhythm parts that are, I mean, it's very rhythmic. And you said earlier, you're a rhythmic guy, and
Yeah,
and it makes it
the
stand
Latin
out.
blood.
Yeah, the Latin blood.
Yeah.
All right, we're on to I Want to Rock. I Want to Rock, and I interrupted you earlier, and I apologize, but the guitar solo on this is a crybaby. It's the only crybaby on the album. So, what's the deal with the wah-wah pedal on this solo? Right?
Well, that was another thing with Tom Workman, because they called me in to do the solo, because originally JJ was supposed to do the solo, but they didn't like what he came up with. I think they said it was too Chuck Berry-ish or something.
It's a hard song to play a solo over. I've covered this song before,
Yeah.
and what you did on this is excellent.
Yeah, so what I did, so he said, hey, why don't you try a wah-wah pedal? So those are all Workman's pedals, and I think I was going through a Mesa Boogie. Either that or I'm pretty sure it was a Mesa Boogie. But it sounded like the noise level inside the studio was like, with all the gain and with the
Yeah.
It was so loud, but they used to use the noise gate to fix it, so it was no problem. But he hooked me up with like this really like insane tone, volume, and so when they played it, I was just practicing, like just riffing on, just a jammed out solo, improvising. So it was just supposed to be a warm up, and they said, "Okay, we got it." I said, "That was just practicing," which is great. Sometimes you do things like that because you're so relaxed.
Yeah.
That you don't even think about
Yeah.
making a mistake, because you say, "Well, I'm not going to keep."
You
this
didn't
up."
freeze up because you knew the red light was on.
You just mess around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the way I approached it. I wasn't because I never.
So it was like one take, and
I
they
didn't
nailed
even
it.
sit down to write it. It was just me riffing out.
Yeah.
You
That's
know?
cool because you said the songs you knew you were going to play leads on, you had it worked out already.
Most of
so
them,
they
yeah.
just threw this one at you, and you just
Right,
sat down and.
Because they, like I said, I wasn't going to do the solo on that, but that's the way it turned out, which kind of works for the track, which is the most important thing, not who plays the solo. You play whoever does the better part. You got to do what's best for the song, not the individual. So, yeah, that was. I said, let me try. So I did. I did it a few more times, and they all sounded good, but the first one just worked so well, and I was like, okay. They loved it. I mean,
Yeah.
both of them said, no, we're not touching that. That was perfect. I was like,
Yeah.
well, let me see if I do. And I tried other stuff, but they were fine, but for some reason that one was really in the pocket, and I guess because I was so
Yeah.
relaxed.
Later on down the road, even if there was something you may not
I had to
liked,
learn it after I.
Yeah, that's the hard part, right? Like, what did I do?
Yeah.
But down the road, when you go back and listen to that stuff, if there was anything that you did that you probably weren't sure about, you forgot about it by then, and it just goes,
Yeah.
But that's interesting. How soon after We're Not Gonna Take It did you guys shoot the video for I Want to Rock? It was pretty quick. It was within a couple months, wasn't it?
Probably. Yeah.
You guys were like bam, bam, one after the other.
Los Angeles too. We spent a lot of time in Los Angeles in those days.
Yeah, it's. Did you guys use the same producer for the video that was from? Are they the same?
Well, the director, he just uses the music. They don't.
Or the director? I mean, the same guy shot the video, both videos, studios.
Yeah,
or-
Marty Kellner.
Yeah.
did both videos. Yeah, he that has nothing to do with the music producer.
I misspoke. I'm just talking about directing the music video.
Yeah,
was shot by the same guy.
Yeah, Marty Kellner.
Yeah. I know nothing about music videos, so I'm glad you know these names.
Yeah, well, he was, and then he worked for HBO for a long time.
Uh-huh.
Like I said, he used to work with a lot of comedy artists.
Did you get to interact with him very much on the sets, or was he kind of like, just do this, do that, action?
I got along with
do
him
it
pretty
again?
well. He was. I got along with him pretty well.
Yeah.
Because he was very supportive. He really liked what I did.
Again, one of the most iconic scenes ever is the drool running down the guy's mouth when he says, "What do you want to do with your life?"
Right.
I felt like that was me. I mean, that's one reason these songs resonated with me, because as a young kid,
Yeah.
I felt like, a band's finally got my back.
Yeah, we had to ask the guy that was because he called them a lot of names. So he says, "Is that going to bother you if he calls you fat or whatever?" So he was cool about it. The kid that they got to do that part.
I went to our mall in upstate New York, and my mother bought me a Twisted Sister shirt, and I was in ninth grade, and it had had you guys on the front with I think it was like holding the guy in the video with some dynamite or something. I think he was like wrapped
in
up.
His mouth, yeah.
Yeah, and you guys were there, and it was an official shirt. It wasn't a bootleg, and on the back of it said. But on the front it said, "What do you want to do with your life?" And on the back it said, "I want to rock." And the R was the black and pink circles, right?
Right.
And I still have that shirt. I've kept all my metal shirts from all my shows in a box. I still have it, and it's as thin as like Kleenex. But I wore that shirt probably 3 days a week to school, and I wore it so much, and I didn't care. I like after the show, I'm like, this is my uniform,
Right.
and they called me Mr. Sister at school. This one chick was like,
Right.
"Hey, yo, Mr. Sister," and I.
Oh, that was in the video too.
I know, right? But she was nice to me, but I always thought it was like she was slamming me. I always felt bad about it, but and then when I had my kids, I dug that shirt out of my box, and my youngest son would wear that shirt once in a while to school. So it was really hilarious for me to see him wearing the Twisted Sister
you got
shirt.
your money's worth.
I got my money's worth out of it. Yeah, I bet that shirt's probably worth like $100 now.
Yeah, the vintage shirts. Yeah, it's crazy.
But when I say it's as thin as Kleenex, man, that shirt. My mom used to wash everything in bleach, like old lady bleach.
Wow.
So, but yeah, cool, man. That's great times, man. Great video again. All right, so then we have the price.
Right.
I saw you guys at Binghamton. I went to Binghamton University. I saw you guys at Binghamton Arena, Broome County Arena, and it was the day after Christmas. And
Wow.
I remember Dee walked out, and there was like almost 2.5 feet of snow on the ground. The show was not canceled. I'd never been to a concert before, and I had no idea what the devil's lettuce even smelled like. But that place was so full of pot smoke and cigarettes. There were more bowls and bongs. I mean, it was a different time frame. It was.
In the Civic Center or something like that?
It was called the Broome County Arena, and a band called Black Lace opened. It was a female-fronted band. She wore like a bustier. Her band was guys, but she wore like a lace bustier.
I don't remember the
Black Lace.
band.
Yeah, you guys probably didn't even interact with them. It was probably one of the things.
Yeah,
But
I think we were doing a video there.
you did shoot the video, and
Binghamton, yeah.
but it was cool because I remember the first thing Dee said when he came out. I mean, Black Lace was loud. It was all general admission, but you guys came out. Stay hungry, and it ended. And the first thing Dee said was, "We're Twisted Effin' Sister." He dropped the F-bomb like 800 times,
yeah.
right? And there was like the radio was saying, "Oh, before the show, don't bring your kids and be careful. There's going to be adult language." It was like everyone was like warning, and
It makes people want to see it more.
right. And I think he was doing it kind of intentionally, but he said, "I hope everybody had a Merry effing Christmas and you have a happy effing New Year." And I was like, I just, I wasn't even allowed to swear around my parents. I don't think I swore ever around my parents. And I still don't swear that much to this day. But I was like, this guy is for real in his hair. And then you guys went right into the next song. It was like bang, bang, bang. And then when you said you were going to do the video for the price, I remember Dee saying, "We're going to shoot a music video, and we're going to film. Here's the deal. We're going to film it twice. We're going to lip sync, but we're going to edit this later. This is just how it's done." Right. He goes, "But we're going to have these cameras coming around. So when the camera comes your way, make sure your finger isn't sticking up your nose, because you don't want to be that a-hole on the camera with your finger in your nose." He was giving everybody directions.
Yeah, we did that without an audience during the sound check, and then we did it with an audience.
So
it goes back and forth between live and sound check.
Right, and so I didn't know how any of that stuff worked in editing, right? So later on when the video came out, I thought, I'm going to see myself, and you just saw seas of denim. Like we all were wearing Canadian tuxedos pretty much. So everyone was wearing blue jeans and winter coats and stuff. But then you guys had the sound check video, and AJ had the big drumsticks, and
Yeah, right.
you guys were wearing your normal clothes.
Right.
Well, normal,
That was
your
the
rock and roll clothes. Street clothes, right. And then you guys were like Twisted Sister.
Yeah, we went back and forth.
Yeah.
Which was cool because we were,
But
it wasn't always makeup,
But it's really cool because this song showed an emotional side of you guys. It was very melodic, and it's in D minor, right?
D minor, yeah.
Yeah, and it's got a really nice, clean part that you do in the beginning. It sounds like a strat.
It is. It's actually, I used, did I have it at that time? I definitely used a strat for that in the second position.
Yeah.
With a real nice chorus effect. But it was a Stratocaster I used.
Now for the solo, it's not a strat. It doesn't sound.
No, that's when I used the bullseye on that.
Yeah.
Or the TS guitar. The TS logo guitar.
Right.
Those are the two guitars I used on the whole album.
I love that climb you do in the beginning, that victorious run, the meedly, like your typical, Eddie Ojeda did it.
A lot of people cover that solo on YouTube.
I have.
Yeah. You have people showing it, how to play it. And a lot of people, I mean, I think I've seen about 20. Most of the people have it pretty correct.
Yeah. It's a kind of hard because you start below the note, you
Right.
kind of, and you lead into it. And
while he's still singing and do that whole, it's, very melodic theme solo.
Yeah.
That's what I do. I mean,
I love that part where you go, diddle-diddle-doo. That little lick, that do took me forever to figure out. I kept rewinding and going, damn it, what is he doing there? What's he doing?
Yeah, that's a solo that I wrote at home. It just fit in the chord change.
Right.
And then.
And dude, the AJ's drum fill. The drum sound in that song is so powerful with your guitar and the reverb and Dee's tone of his voice. I mean, it's like it's giving me goosebumps just thinking about it. Such a great song.
In fact, Leslie West, when he saw the video, after that I became friends with Leslie West. He was with Larry DiMarzio. There was a place called the China Club on Monday nights. It used to get packed, and people would play, come up and jam. So that's the first time I met Leslie West. And he came up to me, Larry DiMarzio introduced us. I went, oh man, Leslie West, And I became friends with him after that. Then he came down and hung out with to Radio City with us.
Yeah.
But at first he said, hey man, I really like the solo you did on The Price. I said, well, I was copying you, basically. What would Leslie do? I thought,
That's awesome.
He's one of the people like him or Clapton or Beck or whatever. Sometimes I would think, what would he do? Especially Leslie would, because he was very good at coming up with these theme type of nice vibrato solos. So,
well, you definitely needed to do something different in that song, and that really shows your influences and your ability to play to the song itself. And to play around the chords.
There's a lot of feel.
Because
with the vibrato, so it's a lot of feel. It's a feel solo, mostly. And that's the kind of stuff I do. I just like and it's a very popular, well-known guitar solo, more than I ever thought it would get noticed, especially now that I see it all over YouTube. It gets covered so much. It's pretty
Everybody
cool.
loves melodic solos they can sing that are memorable. It's really, really nice to hear the flash and see that. But melodic solos always win in my book.
Me too, because it's not that. I mean, I like the fast stuff, but a lot of times it just sounds like fast scales, playing all these scales. Basically, it really is. It's not really.
But you do have some flashy stuff in it, which is cool. You kind of balance it out.
You got to throw in some of the classics.
And that's what makes it work so good.
Yeah.
You kind of play both sides of the coin there.
Yeah, because, that's just... And I noticed people are going back to the melodic solo thing. Now that the whole shred thing has become so out of control.
Right. It's where do you go from
there's like an 11-year-old kid.
Yeah.
that's like this high playing, Eric Johnson songs, So.
All right, well, the next song on here is "Don't Let Me Down." This song has very desperate lyrics. It sounds like D was, very contemplative type stuff. One thing I noticed about this was AJ's got this diggy. He's got this double bass thing going.
Right.
And you didn't really hear a whole lot of that.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's got a interesting shuffle feel throughout the whole song, and you guys are kind of doing harmony.
It is harmony, yeah.
Is that all you doing all that, or was that you doing that?
Well, in the studio, I did it all. The thing was, whatever can be done the fastest. So I was very easy to do things fast.
Yeah.
1 or 2 takes, and but also I would practice stuff at home, and so whenever I came into the studio, I was ready to go. But live, we did harmonies on that, and that's another one we split the solo up on that song. Like we both goes back and forth.
Yeah.
But yeah, the harmonies, a lot of the harmony stuff I just did myself and then when we played it live, I just showed JJ the harmony part.
Sometimes in the studio, it's easier to do that stuff, and when you got the idea and bang it out, and then flesh it out later live.
Right.
Right, because then it's just because we don't write stuff down and say, here's your part, play it with me. That makes sense.
Yeah, it was easier for me to just get it done and then show whoever how to play it.
Now, Nature of the Beast is next. I feel like this was sort of like Horror-teria, one of those songs. It's got a gallop feel to it. It's kind of a slow gallop.
Which one is that?
Nature of the Beast.
Nature
of the Beast.
For some reason, I always think of that song. It makes you think of Judas Priest, like the groove. You know how Judas Priest has that.
Right.
It almost sounds like.
So you guys are galloping into like battle or something. If you guys did a video for this song, you guys could have had the helmets with the horns and. like Dio videos, like some of those really bad.
Yeah, those.
Thank God you guys didn't do those.
I love Dio, man. But some of the.
What was up with wizard metal back in the early '80s? You know what I mean?
We kind of avoided that.
Yeah, I mean.
Because now it looks pretty funny.
Like with the magic and all.
You see those type of videos, it's hysterical.
Yeah. I'm glad you guys weren't wearing capes and stuff.
No, it's a good thing.
Yeah, but this song's got a slow gallop feel to it. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. It's almost like a musical. Like I know D got into doing musicals later, but it's almost like it's got this gritty rhythm that you've got on your other songs. It's got the same solo tone as Captain Howdy. You're going to have to go back and on your way home today. You got to listen to this album, and you got to tell me Captain Howdy and Nature of the Beast.
I got to hear what you're
You guys must have done. You must have cut both of these solos through the same setup. They totally different solos, but I love the sound that you've got on it. It's like a neck pickup with lots of mid range. It's cool. But
the Beast, I did the solo on that song too.
But Nature of the Beast is so different than every other song on this album. They all have their own personality, but this song is just you got to listen to it. It's very much like a musical. D inspired by? You said he was inspired by horror movies.
Yeah, he liked horror movies
and musicals. And did he ever try to explain to you guys? Do this kind of feel, or I'm trying to evoke, or did you guys just kind of all feel it?
It just kind of happened,
Yeah. Seems like AJ drove a lot of that too. Like he kind of
AJ was really good at coming up with the perfect beat for every song.
Yeah.
Very good.
And Don't Let Me Down, he's did some really interesting snare stuff that I picked up on today, and I'm like, man, things that
he was quite the drummer.
There's when you're young, when you're really young, listening to music, you hear, it's like your brain goes right to just like guitar solo or like what the vocals are doing or the music video, and you just kind of like tunnel vision. But when you get more experience, you've played music your whole life, you can listen to music and really dissect stuff, and you can go
Right. Yeah.
you can say, wow, they really worked on this.
Yeah, you can appreciate it.
Right. And so when I say this song sounds like a musical, it's a compliment. It's very, it's different, and it almost, I can hear, you said he was inspired by Alice Cooper, right? You can tell that I think you guys leaned, and this is not I'm not slamming you guys, I'm not saying you ripped anybody off, but I can see you guys lean more to that Priest, Alice Cooper side than you did the Motley Crue side, the glam side. Even though you guys were before Motley, it's just it's sort of like in the fork in the road. But you guys didn't really. You kind of went sort of in the middle in a way through the woods. You didn't really quite follow the Priest Alice Cooper path completely. It's like you guys carved your own.
Yeah, we always had our own sound.
Yeah,
even though it might have been inspired by some other bands, or like that whole dun 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 dun, dun, that kind of beat.
It didn't sound like Holy Diver.
Holy Diver.
Even though they did that song, it doesn't.
There's a lot of songs with that kind of.
I mean, a lot of Metallica stuff is just gallop stuff. It's rock and roll. Everyone does the gallop.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. All right, we're gonna wrap this thing up with S.M.F. Today you hear all these bands. It's been going around for a long time, but all these bands say, like Taylor Swift's got the Swifties, and you've got your, Lady Gaga's got her Little Monsters, and you've got your, I'm talking about pop bands, they call their bass something, but you guys had the S.M.Fs, and I never heard of a band having a bass, a fan base called something
like that.
Now maybe you guys didn't come up with it, but I think you did. I'm going to say you did it.
I think
you guys had your group of people, and it's almost like you were
outcasts. I wasn't crazy about using that name. I just thought it was. There's a fan club. Usually,
well, it was completely different back then. Yeah. You didn't say stuff like that, and
but it's just I thought it was unnecessary swearing.
I kind of felt that way too. But then when I saw it live, I'm like, well, this is what we are branded. I suppose the Kiss Army. Kiss probably invented it. The Kiss Army was around. This Kiss Army. You guys had your S.M.Fs.
S.M.F. Yeah.
But maybe the Kiss Army came later in the '90s. I don't know when they started doing the
Kiss Army. I forgot when they started that, but
when they started doing the
everybody, like you said,
like the trade shows and stuff.
Every band has a thing like that.
Right, but you guys were one of the early pioneers of saying, this is what, we're going to call you.
It was easy to say S.M.F.
Yeah. And I remember watching it live. I mean, Dee made us all sing it. He made us, that was
nobody really wants you to be a sick, mother effer.
He explained it, though. Yeah, he made us realize, it's not a bad thing.
It wasn't about getting totally insane.
Right.
Like, that's kind of sick. But it's like sick about the, like sort of really into the music.
What was the origin of that? Was that his idea, or was that something you guys just started calling your fans, or did someone call you guys that, and you guys like, oh, you know what, we are S.M.F.
I think somebody said that. You guys are sick, but so I'm not sure how it came up, but I tell you, I wasn't crazy about it. It was one of those things that, I got outnumbered with it, outvoted, but it was one of those things I didn't care for. But it did work. I mean, but there was things that I didn't care for that didn't work. That nobody listened to me, but
yeah. I mean, I think it's an appropriate song to end the album with. The solo has some cool changes. It's pretty fast solo. I mean, it's pretty quick. And it came out cool. And I think as far as an anthem, I mean, I think it was a good way to end this record. And it makes some songs are better live. I remember Kirk Hammett talking about on Master Puppets, the thing that should not be. Originally they weren't. I think he said they weren't happy with it, or a lot of fans didn't like the thing that should not be. But when they play it live, it brings on a whole new life, and they love it. And I think with S.M.F., I think it's not really a track I would listen to all the time off the album. I'm like, yeah, it's cool, but but if I heard it live, I'd be like, it's a live song. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is a live song.
But it's not a bad track. But I remember George Martin.
As we go into the, we bring it down. And D does this whole, all right, I want you to,
Yeah.
this whole rap thing.
Yeah. Did you guys always close your shows with that, or was it
Pretty
we're not gonna,
much.
or we're not gonna take it? Maybe we're not gonna take was always in the middle, wasn't it?
Always in the middle, yeah.
Yeah, like the peak.
Yeah, those songs were always in the middle. But, yeah, I think it was always a ender, you know. Sometimes we did an encore. We did something else. Sometimes we did an encore with a cover song or something.
Right. Something different just to close the show out.
Yeah.
But I was saying earlier, I remember reading an interview with George Martin, and I think what I'm about to mention is, about this record. You may not have ever really thought about this, but George Martin said when he would do, he always came up with the track order for the Beatles albums.
Oh, you know that.
And he said to him, an album always had four corners. You had end of side, the start of the album,
Yeah.
end of side of the first side, and then you had to have your track that started,
Right.
second side, and ended the album. And nowadays, everything is bands release singles, and they do everything, or they may do an EP, or everything's just digital. So there's not
Right.
you don't got to flip anything. But this album, when you look at it in four
Back then,
corners,
people used to listen to the whole album.
right, and so
now-
you had to have
now
like a
people just want to hear the hits.
yeah, and it's almost like you had to have a cliffhanger. And it seems like the single was always the second or third song.
Right.
It was never the first song. The first song was always the statement. So we
Right.
had "Stay Hungry" was
Good opener, yeah.
and then the end of side A was Street Justice, Horror-teria. It did you went through the Horror-teria sequence,
Right.
and you got kind of weirded out. And then side two, bam, it nails you. Side two
Horror
always
rock.
seemed to have
That's a
another
good start,
single.
yeah.
Side two always had a single, boom, and then it ended with S.M.F, which was your statement,
Right. Yeah, it was well placed.
So it's really got a
Yeah.
good track listing. Do you guys remember? Do you remember if you guys had any say in that, or do you just remember getting the album, going, "Oh, there's the album"?
I'm not sure who thought of that. Could have been a production thing. How the ran, but I thought it was very good. Like to have "I Want to Rock" first song on the side B.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know if that's true, but I do remember George Martin saying he came up with the Beatles track listings, and he tried to always have four corners, and think about how it was going to flow and what the listener was going to expect
Right.
when the side two hit.
Right.
And I think the layout of this album couldn't be any different than what it is.
No.
When you look at the listings of the album, they flow really well.
That's probably another reason why this album did so well. The whole flow of it and the story of it.
I think so too.
Really represents a lot of what the band is. I think people got us after that. They got it. More than the first couple albums.
Overall, what do you think your proudest moment on this album is? What do you as a guitar player? When you listen back to it or you hear it? What's your maybe proudest, or maybe your top one or
Probably
two?
the solo on the Price.
The Price.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Then probably I Want to Rock. But probably that solo is probably my favorite. Because I got to do something like Leslie Clapton-ish, you know what I mean, but add my own thing to it. You
Yeah.
know? But definitely influenced by those kind of players.
How does it feel to know that this album is 40 years old and
Still gets airplay.
it still gets airplay, and you see these videos come on, or you hear people people recognize you, or you just know you did this. What's it feel like to know that you were part of rock and roll history?
It's
legend. This is legendary, man.
I know it's a great thing. Not too many people can get that in their lifetime. So, yeah, it's definitely doesn't suck. Let's put it that way. I mean, that's what everybody wants. Any musician that wants to make it,
Yeah.
they always want to have that. Something that's iconic and just really still works.
Yeah, I think this was a good example of you guys being a fantastic band, paying your dues, having the right songs, having the right members.
Mm-hmm.
MTV strapped a jetpack to y'all's back.
Yeah, it was crazy.
You guys were successful even without MTV, and probably would have went on for many years afterwards.
But it helped.
But yeah, I mean, immediately you guys were known across. I mean, cable TV. A lot of people that are younger don't understand that. When we just had local channels, no one would know who you were. But cable TV in everyone's house, you could overnight.
Yeah, it was.
Somebody in Topeka, Kansas, could see what Twisted Sister was and would have never even. It was like internet on TV.
Yeah, people memorized the whole script.
Right.
People say, "Who are you? Where do you come?" I heard people do that so many times. If I was visiting somebody and they had young kids, they would go through the whole routine with in front of me. Like, it's great when something catches on like that.
Well, when you play this for young kids, even when I played it for my kids when they were little, they're captivated by it.
Yeah.
And to be able to do that, you have to be. It's got to be good. It's got to be entertaining. It's got to be fun.
Got to have it.
And it's got
the it factor.
It's a earworm. You want to be able to listen back to it again and say, let me.
Yep.
So,
Well,
dude, I really appreciate you coming in and talking to me. I've been bugging you for a long time to do this,
right?
And you're a good friend, and I appreciate it. But if you guys have any questions, please put them in the comments below. And Eddie watches the channel from time to time when I pester him about it. But maybe he'll respond to them in the comments. If not, I can get you some answers, and we'll do some more stuff with Ed in the future. We've got some other fun stuff planned. So, thanks, Ed, for doing this with me.
Sure,
I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And congratulations on 40 years. And
40 years and still kicking.
Maybe one day, you get D out here, and we can, do something.
Well, that'll never happen, but you could say that.
Well, next time you talk to him on the phone, say, tell him you found his bone.
They should have saved it somewhere. Put it in the museum.
Put it in the Smithsonian, right?
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yeah.
Well, you said he lives.
I got a bone to pick with.
He's in North Carolina, man. He's close by. We would pay.
Yeah, he went south too.
Let's do a road trip.
Yeah, we can show up at his house. I'm sure he'd like that.
All right, if you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing, comment below, and as always, have a great day. Peace out.
Ciao.